Llandudno, bydd hanesydd cymdeithasol lleol Adrian Hughes yn defnyddio Archifau Conwy i ddysgu mwy am bobl sydd â'u henwau ar gofgolofn y dref.
In every village, town and city across the United Kingdom, there's a war memorial like this one here in Llandudno. What I wanted to do was discover the stories of the men whose names are on the brass plaques of this memorial here. And what I discovered was some amazing stories of the 122 men whose names are on this war memorial. After transcribing the names from the war memorial, I came here to Llandudno Archives to look at the papers to see if I could find any more information about the men who died, such as Douglas Kirkham, who was a wireless operator on the Arandora Star, which was a liner before the Second World War, but was taking Italian internees from the port of Liverpool to Canada when it was sunk on July the 2nd, 1940 by a German U-boat. He was 28 years old, married with 2 children. When I first came to the archives, I don't really know what I was expecting. I came as a bit of a surprise. I was like a kid in a sweet shop. There was just so much information, so many resources that I just was overwhelmed really. It was difficult to narrow down where to begin. The stuff were fabulous. When I first came to the archives, they pointed me in the right direction. I'm so glad that somebody had the foresight to archive these newspapers, because they're a window into our past, and without them our social history would be lost, and we need to keep it alive. We need to be able to research it, not just for social historians like myself, but for people who want to research their families for future generations.
This morning, the British ambassador in Berlin handed the German government a final note stating that unless we heard from
This is a living room as it would have been in 1939. On the 3rd of September, Neville Chamberlain would have announced on the wireless to the British public that the country was at war with Germany. Yeah, I became interested because an incendiary device that had landed on my grandparents' drive during the Second World War they used as a doorstop, and my interest aroused from there. And I read around the subject more and more, and I visited car boot sales and jumble sales and antique fairs, and I just picked up bits and pieces that were for pocket money really. I was only a child, and it grew into the collection you see today. Approximately 1,500 men and women from Llandudno served in the services during the Second World War, and it's fascinating in the local papers to find the with the colours section, and what's very poignant is that you find men such as Gunnar Morris here, who was mentioned on June the 1st, 1940, as somebody who was serving in the British Expeditionary Force, and yet a month later you find that he's missing in action. Many local men were part of the Territorial Army before the Second World War. They grew up together, they went to school together, and ultimately they fought together, and tragically some died together. On the 11th of June 1940, Gunnar Samati became the last member of the local battery to be killed. He was on the beaches at Dunkirk waiting evacuation, along with his brother Tom, who was a dispatch rider in the same regiment. And while Tom managed to escape on the Royal Navy boats, Arthur was left behind, and while digging a trench, he was killed by shrapnel. It must have been terrible for his brother, waiting back in the UK to hear what had happened to his younger brother.
Mae cofnodion fel y rai yn Archifau Conwy yn gallu rhoi cipolwg unigryw a gwerthfawr ar profiadau pobl ers talwm.
Often they can provide the only evidence there is of something that's happened in the past. And also they connect people with what it's like to have been a human being at so many points in the past. And often they're so frail. You know, paper, what a miracle that it survives at all beyond 20 years. And some of the paper here is perhaps 500 years old. So it's just quite a magic thing all round to me.
I unrhyw un sydd â diddordeb mewn hanes, mae archif yn gyfle gwych I wneud ychydig o waith detective.
There's a certain amount of discovery that you're doing for yourself when you're looking at primary sources, whereas if you read a book, somebody else has done the research and you're reading it as fact, they've done all the work. But when you come to somewhere like the archives and you're discovering, you feel like a pioneer, you feel like you're discovering the information for the first time, and that's what I love to do compared to just reading a book that someone else has written. Nearly every town in the United Kingdom has a memorial like this. Every name on every memorial has a story waiting to be discovered.